Hey YouTube, it's Grace. If you've seen any of my videos, like ever, you'll know that I've been doing pixel art for quite a while, 2.5 years to be exact. And I've learned quite a few things from doing it for so long, and so I figured I'd share those things with you. So today, I'm going to be telling you 10 things that I wish I knew before I started pixel painting. And just to clarify, I don't do any sort of digital art, so this is solely related to like real physical paintings. Tip number 1 is to always make sure to double count your pixels in your grid before you paint. I've had several situations where I didn't do this and I ended up being one too many or one not enough, and I was too far in to stop and like fix it. Finishing those paintings and still making them look good was a little bit difficult. Going along with this one, I always like to draw out my grid in pencil instead of pen or marker. That way, if I do make a mistake, I can always go back and fix it before it's too late. Number 2, I always like to have a layer of primer or something else in between the pencil grid and the paint. I find that otherwise, if I don't do this and I just paint straight on top of the grid, that the grayish lead color from the pencil will bleed into the paint and discolor the paint, and it just really does not look good. So I've found that just adding a really thin layer of primer, or I've seen other videos online of people finding other like life hacks for things you can use. I don't know, I feel like I saw hairspray as one of them, but I've never tried that, so I don't know if that would work. Number 3 is to keep your painting containers, that way it doesn't dry out, especially with bigger paintings in the background that you're going to have to let it dry between coats and then go back and add another coat. I made this mistake a whole bunch in the beginning. I would just paint, I would use like a little palette. Most of the time it'd just be like a paper plate because I don't have an actual palette, and the paint would just dry way faster and I would end up having to remix the entire color, which was really frustrating. So I went to IKEA and I found a whole bunch of these little tiny containers. They're so convenient. I use them all the time. I have like 50 of them at this point, and they have saved me so much time because my paint doesn't dry out anymore. Number 4 is angle brushes. I cannot count the amount of times people have asked me how I get my lines so straight, and while a steady hand does come in handy here, angle brushes like this are a million times easier to keep your lines straight than just using something like this or like this. Okay, I finally got my camera to focus. This one here, this is good. These two on this side are way harder to do straight lines with. And also going along with that one, just making sure that the brushes you're using are in good condition and making sure that the bristles aren't like split out all over the place. I kind of butcher my brushes, so I can't use them for very long. So the old ones are really hard for me to get clean lines. Tip number 5 is making sure that you have a good quality reference photo. I get most of my reference photos online, either that or I make them myself, but sometimes finding them online can be really tricky because the resolution of some of the images on Google is just so terrible, and having a good quality image just makes it way easier to zoom in on that picture and see exactly where each color needs to go. Number 6, if you feel overwhelmed by how complicated a painting is or a reference is, don't be afraid to simplify it, especially when you're first starting out. I remember I felt so overwhelmed when I first looked at some of those Minecraft paintings when I wanted to start making them, because every single pixel is a slightly different color, and that was just really overwhelming because I couldn't imagine mixing hundreds or thousands of different colors. So something I do, there's probably a real term for this, but in my head I call it color rounding. And it's like, oh, these colors are close enough. I'll just like round them into one color and then go back and add details at the end. And that just sort of makes things much easier on my end. I'll add some pictures in here. Like this is what it looks like for like my rough draft with like the color rounding, and then this is what it looks like after I've gone back and added the details in. That also sort of allows you to add your own personal touch to each piece and make it slightly different, because for my paintings at least, I'm not trying to be a human printer. I just want it to look pretty close. Number 7, do your best to remember exactly where each color goes. If you have to even mark on the canvas and like label each color before you even start painting, that's great. But if you're mixing a whole bunch of colors and you're not exactly sure where each one will go, there's a chance that you'll paint the wrong one in the wrong spot, especially on the second coat, which is really frustrating. I speak from personal experience, so just be sure that you're aware of where each color is supposed to go. That sounds like common sense, but it's really easy to forget when you have so many colors going on. Tip number 8 just has to do with keeping you entertained during this process, because if you're gonna spend like 10, 15, 20 hours on one painting, sometimes it can get a little bit boring. So I always like to make sure that I have a music playlist, or I know some people don't do music, so podcasts or even like a movie. I always make sure that I listen to my Spotify Discover Weekly during painting, and that really just helps me like stay focused because I actually have something new to listen to and think about while I'm painting, so it doesn't feel super repetitive. Number 9, this is sort of just a personal preference for me, but I personally think paintings look a million times better when you extend the painting onto the edges of the canvas. I made this Lovejoy poster painting thing a little over a year ago, and I just decided to paint the edges gray, and I feel like it just doesn't look great, and it would have looked a lot better had I just extended the sky and the cloud colors onto the edge. This is a painting I made a few months ago, and I did do that, and I feel like it just looks so much better. And lastly, number 10, this is especially important when you're first starting out with pixel painting, is to have so much patience with yourself. This means anything from when you're mixing the colors to when you're drawing the lines on the grid to just feeling like you need to rush to finish a piece. Take a breath and realize that if you take your time and do your best on each piece, that you're going to be a lot happier with the result rather than if you rush through it because you're bored and you just want to be done with it. Practice makes perfect, and getting to a point where you're really proud of every piece you make in a certain medium takes a long time. So don't be too hard on yourself if your pieces aren't turning out exactly how you want, especially right at the beginning. If you guys have any questions that I didn't really answer in this video, be sure to leave a comment down below and I will be more than happy to answer them for you. Or if you have like a really specific question, feel free to message me on Instagram and I would love to help you through it and see how your guys' art pieces turn out. So yeah, that concludes this video. I hope you enjoyed and found it somewhat helpful. Thank you for watching, and I will hopefully see you in my next one. Bye!